loves, and welcome to another Fluffenhammer adjacent. Now, you've probably seen recently on the Warhammer community that one of the rumors that's been floating around out there since the beginning of 10th Ed actually has sort of panned out. We were all saying that the up and coming Chaos Space Marine Codex, which I think is very soon actually, isn't that in June or so, around the summer? That's going to be a very significant marker for a number of reasons because what's in it or what's not in it is going to demonstrate how 10th Ed pans out to a certain degree. One of the rumors floating around before it was officially announced is that the Emperor's children were not going to be in this codex, and rather, very like the World Eaters, very like the Death Guard, very like the Thousand Sons, they will eventually somewhere down the line be getting their own codex. Obviously, in this instance, they're not going to be coming very soon, and that's been officially announced on the Warhammer Community article on the matter. What they're going to get is their own index, so they can be used. It's going to be related to the Chaos Space Marine Codex, so presumably you'll use that as a base, and then you'll use the index around that. But what it does mean, this echoes how the World Eaters were released. The World Eaters were released at the very end of ninth. When the Chaos Space Marine Codex for ninth Ed came out, there were no World Eaters in it. And so they got a special army list in White Dwarf. That's what's happening here. So what does this mean? What does this mean? It means that somewhere in 10th edition, either to what my guess will be towards the tail end of 10th edition, or maybe even as an introductory army into 11th edition. Ooh, 11 editions of 40k, eh? We're going to get the Emperor's Children. There's going to be an Emperor's Children release. It's not going to be for a while. My guess is it won't be for a very long time, which is fine. That's absolutely fine. What this does is it signifies to those of us who have been clamoring for the Emperor's Children for the longest time. Those of us who love Slaanesh, who love Fulgrim, who love the Emperor's Children, that they're coming. There is work going on behind the scenes. We're going to see hints and suggestions of them eventually. And we're going to get, I mean, what this means is we'll get Noise Marines at long last. Do you know? Here's a funny one. There has never been a dedicated Noise Marine boxed set. Ever. Not ever. There have been, since the original Noise Marines, which were all metal miniatures way, way, way back when, there were the original Noise Marines, which were they were sort of in between um, Lost and the Damned and Second Ed's release, and they were very limited. There were only like one or two metal miniatures. There were the Metal Noise Marines for Second Ed, which again, only three miniatures. They were very cool. I loved those original Noise Marines, but there were only three of them. They were so weird. They didn't even look like Chaos Space Marines. They were just bizarre. Absolutely wonderful things. But there were only three of them, and they were all metal, so making an army of them was prohibitive. Third Ed, you got an Emperor's Children update kit for the standard Chaos Space Marine kit that had two Noise Marines in it. The components to make a Noise Marine with a Blastmaster and a Noise Marine with a Doom Siren. No, sorry, there were three. So there was the capacity to make a Blastmaster, Doom Siren, and the Sonic Blaster. Only one of each. So that didn't count. Since then, there've been the Cacophony for Horus Heresy. Again, not really a dedicated Noise Marine set, and certainly not a plastic set for 40k. We haven't had one. There has not been a dedicated Noise Marine set ever. Ever, 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 ever. In the same way that right up until the middle of Third Ed, there'd never been a Thousand Sons kit either. There'd never been a Rubrique kit till then. You had to, in Second Ed, you had to put them together yourself, and in early Third Ed, you had to sort of cobble them together from existing Chaos Space Marines. So we know, as a result of this, we will get our first ever fully dedicated plastic boxed set of Noise Marines. What I'm wondering is, what aesthetic are they going to follow? Because there's quite a difference between, like, the sort of hyper mutated Cenobitic cacophony chaos Noise Marines you get from Horus Heresy, and the noise marines, the sort of hair metal, rather silly ones that you got early on from 40k. My guess is they'll sort of be they'll be closer to the cacophony. I think. I don't think they'll go with the sort of silly hair metal Baltazar's guitars thing. I don't think they're going to go down that route. They're going to be really hyper mutated. They're going to have like broadcasters erupting from their mouths and their eyes. They're going to have pipes all over them and whatnot. Very, very cool stuff. I can't wait to see. I cannot wait to see what they do with them. On the back of that, what can we assume? Well, they'll be obviously this is going to be a full miniatures range, right? This is going to be something akin to the World Eaters, to the Death Guard. I mean, I'm hoping it edges more closer to the Death Guard in the sense that it's a more expansive release, that there's more of them, you know. I would love to see a Terminator unit, a dedicated Terminator unit for the Emperor's Children. That would be wonderful. And something else, maybe. I mean, maybe a dedicated possessed unit. There will almost certainly be a human or sort of mortal cultist equivalent in the same way that we've got the Zarngor for Thousand Sons, the Poxwalkers for Death Guard, the Jackals for World Eaters. There'll be an Emperor's Children equivalent. In fact, if they pay attention to the background, there should be more mortals in an Emperor's Children army than in any of the other cult legions, because the Emperor's Children rely on them and attract them more than any other cult legion. They in the background, in the fluff, they are always accompanied by these lurid carnivals of cyberites and cultists and Slanesh worshippers that have mutilated themselves and surgically altered themselves and have just been mutated and altered and transformed. That I think should be a really significant part of the army. I think that should be, for my money, I would love to make that the mainstay of the army and make the actual Chaos Space Marines the elite parts of the army, the quite rare parts of the army. I think that would work really, really well. Um, but no, I'm dying to see what they do. And with the index as well. I mean, the index will obviously give us some indication of what the Emperor's Children are going to be like, how they're going to play. We won't see any of the dedicated units in the index other than Noise Marines, but we might get a taste of what their rules are going to pan out like and how they're going to be different from, say, Death Guard, Thousand Sons, and World Eaters, and core Chaos Space Marines. This also means for the core Chaos Space Marine Codex, there's just going to be more space. This is the first Chaos Space Marine Codex that can be dedicated to the non-cult legions, to the what I suppose you could call the undivided legions, your Black Legion, Word Bearers, Alpha Legion, Night Lords, and Iron Warriors, right? And that is really cool. That is really cool. It gives them way more space to breathe. It gives the codex just a little bit more focus and flavor. I'm very pleased. I'm very, very pleased. And I cannot wait to see what this is going to be like. What are the Emperor's Children going to be like? I mean, they are the last of the cult Chaos Space Marine forces to get their full codex, to get their Primarch. Fulgrim will obviously be coming. The 40k version as well, which I imagine will be significantly removed from that Horus Heresy one. I mean, I love the Horus Heresy one. It was brilliant, it was beautiful, but just poorly timed, as we've discussed before. I think also what might have happened, what might have spurred Games Workshop um, announcing this so early, so long before the release of the Emperor's Children, is because of the relative backlash from the Horus Heresy Fulgrim. I mean, it's not that it wasn't popular. The miniature itself has got universal praise. It was just very poorly timed, you know, given that people have been clamoring for 40k Fulgrim for the longest time and for the Emperor's Children to come back. It's going to be huge, actually. It's going to be a bit of an event because it's been a long time since Slanesh has had a dedicated presence in 40k. All of the other Chaos forces have had their moment, they've had their time. The World Eaters are kind of having theirs at the moment with Angron's return, and he's certainly making an impact. So, Fulgrim making his dedicated resurgence into the 40k universe. I can't wait to see. I wonder, we might even get some new characters. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a new Lucius miniature. We'll get a new Lucius the Eternal. I mean, I like the old one, but it's very static these days. The thing about Lucius the Eternal is that he's a duelist. He's supposed to be incredibly fast and lithe, so I imagine the new Lucius miniature will be very dynamic. He'll be dancing, darting, moving all over the place. He won't be as static as he is. So that's going to be very interesting. But I'd also imagine there'll be another one. There will be Eidolon. My guess is if there is another character in The Emperor's Children, it will either be an entirely new character or it'll be Eidolon, because Eidolon is the obvious choice. He's a very significant power within the background of The Emperor's Children. He's one of the core lieutenants from that background. So, yeah, what really excites me is how they're going to expand on them. What have they been doing? Because, of course, the funny thing is, in the same way that the Thousand Sons mirror the Death Guard, in that they're not as fractured as the other Chaos Space Marine legions, they actually have central authority. They have a homeworld to call their own, and they have something unifying them. In the Thousand Sons case, it's Magnus. In the Death Guard's case, it's Mortarion. Of course, there are schisms and there are offshoots and there are all sorts of politics that goes on. But generally speaking, they are some of the more unified legions, and they seem to work with regards to something like a mutual agenda. That is not true of the World Eaters. They are one of the shattered legions. Even with Angron back, there's no central authority. They cannot really coalesce into a force anymore. They're separate war bands. I'm wondering what they're going to do with the Emperor's Children, because they are in a similar status to the World Eaters at the moment in the background. They're different. They're vying war bands. They're scattered all over the universe and all over the Eye of Terror and all through the warp. And each of them is dedicated to a different Slaneshi ideology, different champions, different power structures. If Fulgrim pulls them together, will they become one of the more coherent legions? Or will they remain shattered? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. But it's certainly going to be interesting. It's certainly going to be interesting. And how have they changed? How have they evolved? What are they doing now? What are the Emperor's Children doing out there in the universe now? And how are they operating? What subcults have they developed? It's going to be really, really interesting. How have they responded to changes in the universe, like Angron's return, Robite waking up, the Cicatrix Maledictum? How have they responded to that? It's going to be fascinating. I hope there's just a headload of background for them, because they're unlike the other legions. They haven't had it. They haven't had that degree of development. They've kind of been like, the red-headed stepchild of the Chaos Legions for a long time, and they've just been kind of there. The most that's happened is with regards to one of their offshoots, which is Fabius Bile, who doesn't really count anymore. He was an Emperor's Children originally, but he's not anymore. He's part of the core Chaos Space Marines now. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be really interesting to see what route they take with them. Where do they go with them? I can't wait. I honestly cannot wait, because if they echo the stuff that's been going on with the Slanesh forces in AOS, then it'll be brilliant, because the Hedonites of Slanesh in AOS are just mesmerizingly brilliant. They're one of the most acutely Slaneshi forces that's ever been in any game system. The background, the aesthetics, the miniatures, the way they operate, it's just beautiful. They are so cool to play with if you're into Slanesh. I hope there's something akin to that in The Emperor's Children in 40k. I can't wait. I honestly cannot wait to see. On a side note, when they release, this will happen when they release the Demons Codex, but surely this time round in 10th ed, they should use this as an excuse to release the children of Slanesh, Sinessa and Dexessa, into 40k, because they're demons. They exist in multiple realities. There's no reason why they shouldn't occur in the 40k universe, and they could even use it as the basis for a campaign or something. How they're introduced into the 40k universe, that would make for some very interesting special characters. After that, the only thing I can think of is when the Demons Codex is released, which I imagine will be right towards the end of 10th Ed, because the demons need work. The demons need a lot of work to function in 40k, and also they need new miniatures. The characters are generally pretty good. The characters are generally all up to date, barring one or two examples like Epidemius. But the core, the troops, they're old now. The demonettes, the plague bearers, the bloodletters, and the pink horrors, they're pretty old hat now. The pink horrors are all right, but the others don't really stand up anymore. They could do with some new sculpts. The demonettes in particular could do with redesigning, to be more in keeping with the aesthetic of Slaanesh and their background. But yeah, I'm very excited, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are also deeply, deeply excited too. Let's see what the rumor engine puts forth, eh? Till next time, my loves. Bye bye.